always great catching up with the voice of the UFC, Jon Anik, going to be on the call this Saturday for UFC 316. Jon, how's it going, man? Good to talk to you.
Always good to talk to you, and I did not brush up on my hockey in advance of this conversation, so I'm a little bit intimidated. Hopefully we, focus as much on mixed martial arts as we usually do.
We will. I always throw a little curveball in these interviews. We'll talk a tiny bit of hockey at the end. Just your overall thoughts as someone who I know is watching from afar. But let's talk about this main event on Saturday. Obviously, the rematch between Merab and Sean O'Malley. Was it your understanding that O'Malley was always going to get this fight? Because I think some fans thought maybe Petr Yan could have been an option. He's had 2 wins since the first fight with Merab. Was it always O'Malley in your eyes?
Well, if you have the chance to give a superstar, however you want to quantify superstar is up to you. But if you have a chance to give someone like Alex Pereira an immediate rematch against Magomed Ankalaev, or Sean O'Malley an immediate rematch here or championship opportunity, of course, Merab defended the title. And I think there are reasons to do it. And I think that's why they did it. Competitively, I don't have a huge issue with it. And having now gone back and watched the fight at Sphere between these two the first time around, I thought it was closer than initially at first glance. And I think ultimately, even though Merab's rounds were dominant and maybe the rounds that O'Malley won were close, as Kenny Florian said to me earlier this week, I do think that the fight in totality was closer than people think, and that could bode well for a now healthy Sean O'Malley. So I'm excited for the rematch. It's crazy that the champion defended the belt on the Challengers timeline in January. Now, at least for Merab, it's on his timeline, and we'll see what O'Malley has to offer the second time around.
Yeah, what do you make of the adjustments? I even saw something this morning that O'Malley has his gym set up where it's like he's walking to the octagon. He's really focusing a lot on every little detail, it seems. Will that be enough to get him the win here? Obviously, he's got the knockout power, but how much different do you expect this rematch to go?
I don't even know if Merab Dvalishvili is a human being. Certainly the nickname, The Machine, is very appropriate for him. So if you're fighting that guy, James, if you or me was fighting him, cardiovascularly, I would think that would be the jumping off point. I have to be in the best shape of my life as humanly possible so that if I am taken down repetitively, then I can get back up and maybe I'm no worse for wear. So I do think strength and conditioning commitment had to have led the dance. The torn labrum in the hip is healthy. A big part of the narrative after the fact, after the Sphere fight from Sean O'Malley, was sort of over-promising and under-delivering. And I even sat down with him and wondered, why are we over-promising if we're going into the fight with hip surgery scheduled thereafter? So health is wealth. I don't know how much the health is going to factor into things, but you got to be in the best shape of your life. And I think you got to take more chances because Merab is all over the place. And, I think risk mitigation is such a huge part of fighting. I would like to see Sean O'Malley be aggressive. Yes, invest in the body early, but take some chances.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you feel like O'Malley does need to knock him out? Like, I just wonder a world where the fight goes the distance. I think it'd be tough to, possibly outstrike Merab for 5 rounds. We mentioned the cardio there. What are sort of your thoughts on the method of victory in this fight?
I think he can, I think he can outpoint him. And I guess that's just based upon rewatching that first fight. And just knowing that Merab is super tough if he does get hit with a seminal shot. But Sean O'Malley just has a lot of different ways that he can cause pain. And, I think the most significant strike of that entire first fight was a body shot landed by Sean O'Malley in round 5. So certainly the betting odds suggest that Sean O'Malley by decision is a long shot. But if you're asking me sort of in a yes or no sense, do I think Sean O'Malley can win the fight by decision? Yes. And I hope it doesn't sound promotionally hyperbolic because I'm trying to sell the fight like it's honestly just based upon the film study.
Well, I think that's what makes it so intriguing. Like, imagine if O'Malley does win a decision. We've seen, some very interesting results this year in the octagon. Not looking past Saturday, but we do have to kind of think of the future of the bantamweight division. Is Corey Sandhagen getting the winner, do you think? Or we got this new fighter, Patchy Mix, going to be fighting Mario Bautista. If he goes out there and makes a statement, could he leapfrog these guys? He's a former champion over there in Bellator.
It's just crazy, this fight game, right? It is so unforgiving. You have to be so mentally forged, even if you're making 12-12 at the bottom of the roster. But when you're a top guy and you are on the cusp, as Corey Sandhagen is, but maybe you're 1-1 spanning your last 2, the entire fan base wants you to fight for the belt. And now all of a sudden, timing in life is everything. Patchy Mix is in the equation and might potentially delay things. I have no idea. I would love to have a seat in the matchmaker meetings on Tuesday, but I do not. I think Patchy Mix is focused on style points. He's in shape 24/7, 365. He's ready to take on all comers. And I do think that, he could put a little bit of a wedge in Corey Sandhagen's plans. But as you know, that division is sort of an embarrassment of riches. I just think that it might be a little bit of a waiting game for Corey if somehow Patchy does something special. But Super Mario Bautista might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I'm really interested. Well, I know we'll talk about the co-main event, but that fight in particular with Patchy taking on Mario Bautista was supposed to be Cheeto Vera. Patchy Mix steps in here. The thing I find so interesting about this fight, Jon, is Patchy's used to finishing his opponents by submission. You got Mario Bautista, other than that debut against Corey Sandhagen, hasn't been finished in his UFC career. So I wonder how much that will play into this, just with the fact that Bautista does seem to be pretty good defensively.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And Patchy Mix is sort of laying it all out there, right? Saying, I'll submit John Crouch, I'll submit everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really interesting matchup. And I think for Mario, right, when you look back, and it's funny you mentioned his UFC debut against Corey Sandhagen, to that footage and sort of the wide-eyed nature of him, you know, he still aesthetically carries a little bit of that, but now he's a seasoned absolute killer who maybe isn't getting the credit he deserves from the fan base because his win over Jose Aldo by split decision didn't have style points, and he did what he needed to do to win, right? Like a rock fight in the NBA, you're just getting to win and nobody really cares, right? And in fighting, you need style points. So I think that Mario is a beast that is ready to be unleashed. I think the one thing that I look at is his strength of schedule hasn't necessarily been great leading up to the Jose Aldo fight, and Patchy Mix, even if outside the UFC, has been fighting a world-class schedule and a championship schedule. So fascinating fight, pretty close on the money line, as I'm sure you've tapped into, and excited to call it. I got my Patchy Mix fighter card I'm working on right in front of me, James.
Yeah, good. Always doing the homework there. And I agree with you. I mean, Magomedov, he's defeated in Bellator, who has a win over Piotr Jan. Like, you could go through the intangibles of some of the opponents he's fought over there in Bellator. Let's talk about the co-main event. Julianna Pena, plus 460 against minus 675 Kayla Harrison. I think these odds are off a little bit. You know, I know Julianna Pena, a lot of people feel like she didn't win that last fight against Raquel Pennington. It was super close. But Kayla Harrison, you know, hasn't fought the level of opposition that Julianna Pena has. How much will that play into this? And do you think the odds are a little bit off here?
So I do think they are off, but ultimately, you know that they're just trying to get action on both sides. So the betting public, I think, is going to predict or dictate what is going to happen, you know? But again, I feel like based upon film study that yes, it's too wide for my liking, and there would then, I guess, appear to be some value on Julianna Pena. I just think that she can make it a dog fight in some part. I don't know how long the fight's going to go, but she is just more than willing and able and mean enough and in shape enough. She hasn't fought a lot of late, right? Very few appearances since her epic upset of Amanda Nunes. But again, I think from a betting perspective, we got to fight before the fight for Kayla Harrison. And even though she has masterfully handled her first two weight cuts for Holly Holm and Ketlin Vieira, you know, this one is a pound less. And, you know, I think it all bears watching. I just think Kayla has to just be so perfect on the front end of this fight in terms of everything. And I don't know. It's a little bit scary for me when I think about everything that Kayla's going to have to put herself through if she does become the undisputed UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion.
Yeah, that is half the battle, like you said, just making the 135 on the dot. And the other thing I think we have to look at is the 5 rounds. Now, Kayla has fought 5 rounds before, but that was at 155. That's, you know, a different weight class. So how much will that play into this too? Because I think there's some fans wondering, can she go 5 rounds with that big weight cut? What are sort of your impressions on that?
Well, Julianna Pena is not intimidated, and that is absolutely enormous against Kayla Harrison. So if she does get taken down, she is probably going to be opportunistic. She's going to be looking to land elbows. She's going to be trying to leverage hips, and easier said than done, of course, against the 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist. But I just think a moment early for Julianna Pena would be absolutely huge, even if it's a cut. Right? Even if somehow you can cause a cut when you're getting dominated in a round, create a moment, try to change the complexion of a fight that on paper has Kayla Harrison as a 6-1 favorite to beat you. So I think a big part of extending this fight is creating some moment in the first 10 minutes. And I think Kayla Harrison would be wise not to sort of fall in love with her boxing and stand and trade with Julianna, because when I look back at that footage from that first fight between Julianna Pena and Amanda Nunes, you know, a lot of Pena's toughness was what allowed her to sort of walk through that. But Amanda, I don't know, at times felt like she was on a little bit of a suicide mission. So I think Kayla's going to fight a smart fight, but you're right. It's a 25-minute fight, at least on paper.
And you mentioned Amanda Nunes. That's one of the things I think people are wondering. We saw the press conference a couple of months back. Amanda Nunes nodding her head about potentially fighting the winner, especially if it's Kayla, because it's a fresh matchup here. Do you think Amanda Nunes comes back? Because I have some doubts. We haven't really heard much since that whole thing happened. My understanding is I believe she will be there this weekend, but do you think Amanda Nunes comes back?
Well, money talks, right? Money
Yeah.
talks. And I think the Kayla Harrison Amanda Nunes fight is absolutely enormous. And what is the payday for that fight for Amanda, right? Like, I don't know if you care to speculate, right?
Mhm.
It's certainly deep into seven
Oh
figures.
yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's life changing money. So, I don't know that Amanda Nunes necessarily has realized financial freedom in totality that would make her not want to sort of risk legacy. And I will also say, too, is that I don't like the greatest of all time conversation, and even
Mhm.
this week I got a text from Dominic Cruz today. This has sort of pitted me against my friend because I was probed earlier. But Zhang Weili and Valentina Shevchenko are absolutely on Amanda's heels, right? The
Oh yeah.
greatest female mixed martial arts athlete of all time conversation. Not that it's ever closed, but it felt a lot more closed when she retired after the Irene Aldana fight than it does now. I mean, Valentina has a shit ton of momentum, and Zhang Weili might be the best athlete in all of pro sports, as DC says. So, yeah, I think there are myriad reasons for her to come back. But if Julianna Pena wins, I don't know that Amanda Nunes has a huge appetite to do a trilogy. So I think Amanda Nunes will probably be a Kayla Harrison fan come Saturday night. We'll see.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Anything else on this card really catch your eye? You got the Joe Pfeiffer, Calvin Gastelum fight. I think Vicente Luque, Kevin Holland's totally flying under the radar. That's like a fun veterans fight. Anything just come to mind when I say that about some of the other fights that are going to be featured on this card?
Yeah, I mean, we start with great fights at lightweight. This Mark Choinsky is a three-time NCAA D3 All-American making his debut against Markel Medeiros. I'm just looking at the card. Azamet Murzakanov, the light heavyweight prelim fighter, is undefeated. I think
And a bit of a home game for Mirzakhanov too, right? He trains in New Jersey, so that'll be fun.
Fairfield, New Jersey. Joshua Van in the featured prelim might be the most entertaining man in mixed martial arts. But yeah, for me, Joe Pfeiffer and Kelvin Gastelum. Joe Pfeiffer was not the only individual who got violently ill in Mexico City. So I'm excited that they put that fight back together. I'm excited that I no longer have colitis. And hopefully Joe Pfeiffer and I are both ready to go come Saturday night here in Brick City.
Quickly, UFC 317, Oliveira, Topuria. We're looking ahead, which is actually still this month, 2 pay-per-views this month. Your thoughts on that fight? Because I'm really intrigued to see, can Topuria do it again and knock out another legend?
Dude, is Ilia Topuria getting the red corner? I mean, my goodness, can we put some respect on the name Charles Oliveira? No, it's a fascinating fight. Yes, Justin Gaethje, who's the hardest man he's ever been hit by in all of his fights, and it's Charles Oliveira. And I'm just excited to see what Charles can do because the betting line suggests that he's up against it. A lot of Charles's contemporaries are suggestive that this is a custom-made matchup for Ilia Topuria. He's taken on the most decorated finisher in UFC history and the man who reigns supreme atop this weight class. So fascinated to see it. And I think my biggest takeaway with Topuria is just the way guys like Kenny Florian talk about him in such superlative terms. And, we'll see if he can live up to the hype. I'm excited to see him in a division, not cut too much weight. And, great way to sort of usher him in headlining International Fight Week for the soon to be vacant UFC lightweight title. I can't wait.
I know you've been watching from afar, the Stanley Cup going down, I think it's tonight, actually. Sorry, tomorrow night, I should say. Edmonton, Florida. It's the rematch. We all love rematches in MMA, but we're getting this in hockey. Who are you leaning here? Because, I'm a little biased, but I think Florida's getting it again. I think they get it done.
I think they're going to win too. I'm actually rooting for the Edmonton Oilers. And
Okay.
I don't know if I should be rooting for the nation of Canada because it hasn't had an NHL team realize a Stanley Cup since 1993. It's sort of a weird number, James, because so many Canadian hockey players have realized Stanley Cups, right? So it's sort of a foolish conversation. But I am rooting for Edmonton just to sort of end that streak.
Mhm.
And also, as I think we've discussed in the past, I lived in South Florida for 10 years, and I tried to become a Florida Panthers fan. I thought about buying season tickets, and then they beat the Boston Bruins in a playoff series. And now I root against them, even though I like their players with every ounce of me. So go Oilers, and we'll see if they can exact their revenge here tomorrow night.
Wow, turning your back on Brad Marchand. He could be winning a cup here for Florida. Is he dead to you now that he's on the Panthers?
Not at all. And we root hard for him, and that would be the silver lining for me. And you can be sure my twin brother, with whom I share DNA, is rooting for the Florida Panthers. But yeah, dude, that playoff series just destroyed me. And I just can't root for the Cats. I just can't do it.
When do you put in your future bets? Because I know you like doing that for hockey. Is that later in the summer? You kind of reassess how the rosters go after free agents? Because I know you do like doing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, so I actually moved recently, so we've got different sportsbook considerations up here, but we're always looking at the board. We don't like for it to sit there too long. But yeah, I would imagine the first NHL future I'll probably place will be in the month of July. And we'll be sure to let you know first.
Love to hear it. That's great. Always getting some hockey talking here. Jon, thanks for doing this. Anything you got coming up on the Anik and Florian podcast, anything we need to check out, by all means, the floor is yours.
No, just every Monday we are live on the DraftKings YouTube channel, and it's always good to chop it up with you in advance of a pay-per-view. Nice to be back here in the Northeast. Everything tastes better. The water, the coffee. We're excited to go Saturday night on pay-per-view, brother.